Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to attend my talk. Again, there we go. Again, it's my first time here at Hackfest. I'm very excited. Again, I'll be talking about, it's called Strategic Alliances, how GRC teams can empower offensive security efforts, basically how you can work together with GRC. And again, my name is Darryl McLeod. I work actually in the advisory services team at LARS. We're mainly a NetPen, basically a penetration testing organization. Not familiar, is anyone familiar with LARS? Does anyone know Chris Nickerson? Who he is? He's our CEO. So he's one of the co-founders of the penetration testing execution standard. So I'm on the VCSO team. There's actually 3 of us on the advisory services. We mainly do GRC, do risk assessments for clients. And again, I'm from Nova Scotia. Again, it's my first time here. I'm very excited to be here for the first time. And I'm also, I'll do a little plug here for you might see ATL SecCon. So I'm a director of the Atlantic Security Conference. I'm one of the directors in Halifax. We actually just had our 12th year, and our 13th year is coming up in April. And our CFP opens up on November 1st. So if you go to atlseccon.com, and that's the last plug I'll do. So this is our agenda. So first we'll go through how GRC powers up offensive cybersecurity. So basically how GRC can kind of go beyond compliance and play a proactive role in any kind of strategies on the offensive security side. And then we'll go through what the offensive security and GRC bring to the table, basically go through what the different strengths they have. And then we'll have to leverage GRC for any kind of increased efficiency, and then pinpoint your attacks, again, and then compliance, that evil word, compliance, and policy alignment. And then, again, how to combine GRC in offensive security for maximum impact, and they'll go through the conclusion. So here's, standard stock image. So this here is in regards to, how we can actually, powering offensive security with the kind of strategic insight you can get from GRC. So this here in regard to the traditional role of GRC, technically we've been seen as kind of like the rule makers, or not necessarily rule makers, I guess you could say guardians or watchdogs. We have been known to basically, create policies, manage risks, and ensure compliance with standards. And again, we usually operate separately from offensive security teams. I've actually, especially in my job now, I actually do, but I also collaborate with them as well. And then, of course, again, GRC is also seen as the auditors. Again, I actually do have a background as a QSA, so I used to deal quite a bit with, in regards to that standard, I used to deal quite a bit with the penetration testing side of things, to try to validate any kind of penetration testing findings. And again, too, we tend to be focused on assessing risk and trying to enforcing compliance. And again, too, we're never traditionally seen as involved in the offensive side of the operations. So I think this talk here is going to try to actually explain why we could easily, we could help offensive security. And so this here is regard to this kind of imagine a new approach to GRC. What if we could just be more than just try to, again, be the watchdogs of the organization. We could be strategic advisors and collaborate with offensive security teams. We could use real-time risk data and analytics. You could guide offensive teams where you could actually focus on the actual, highest risks that we would determine as on our side as GRC. And we can actually, create a proactive, integrated security environment, which would actually, we can help to anticipate threats and mitigate the risk before they become real problems. And again, this here, we're going to talk about what can offensive security and GRC both bring to the table. Now, can I ask a question here? Does anyone work in GRC here? Or at least have some part of GRC in there? Okay, I'm not surprised. I assume I'm not going to bother asking who works in offensive security. Everyone. Okay. So again, too, of course, we all sit at the table. GRC's on one side of the table there with their suits and going over paperwork. And then, offensive security side of things, you got all the multiple monitors. So again, we kind of know this too. Again, so what do offensive security they bring to the table? Again, offensive security, defense security teams are fantastic at bringing technical expertise to the table. You can actually, think like attackers. You've got the attacker mindset, and you also have deep knowledge of how to exploit vulnerabilities. But then there's GRC, it's like me. We excel at kind of identifying like the greatest risks to the business on the business side of things. We try to ensure that everyone adheres to any kind of regulatory frameworks that the organization would have to follow. And we try to keep everything aligned with business objectives. And so like the benefits like to collaboration, when they, basically we get the two sides of the house together, good things can happen. We can help offensive teams on the GRC side, try to understand which vulnerabilities matter most from a business standpoint. And we'll go into those deeper later. And again, offensive security teams can provide like insights on how the vulnerabilities could be exploited in real-world attacks. And now we'll talk about compliance as an asset. That's often you don't hear that, where compliance is an actual asset. So again, compliance is often seen as a burden. Like, that's really people, you actually say, like governance risk compliance, it's like, oh, yawn, I don't want to have to deal with that. Everybody automatically assumes that it's actually to deal with paperwork and review policies and procedures and do risk assessments. But again, with GRC teams, we can actually kind of, make compliance not a dirty word. It can actually, kind of integrate the requirements into offensive security operations by, it'll actually make sure that security testing is effective, but also aligned with any particular regulatory standards that you'd have to follow. And offensive security teams, they can really benefit when GRC ensures the tests, again, kind of align with those regulations, with those standards. Like, of course, the big thing is PCI DSS is a huge one. And also too, like, say, NIST 853. There's like, strict penetration testing requirements. And also, GRC helps prevent any conflicts from regulations or penalties from non-compliant actions or non-compliance. We can actually help there to determine, say, okay, we need to do this to actually kind of basically to try to avoid any kind of compliance issues. And then, and also in this way, offensive security efforts, so basically, offensive security doesn't have to worry. Say GRC can kind of take that worry off. So offensive security side of the house do not have to worry about any compliance issues. GRC will actually go and determine, say, okay, this is what you have to actually target. And now this risk data as a targeting tool. So this here, GRC, again, we can do kind of like a detailed risk analysis that can really help offensive security teams target the efforts where it matters the most. Like, say, for example, the GRC team actually identifies a particular system as high risk due to any kind of sensitive data it stores. So then, offensive teams can then focus their tests on those areas as potentially pointed out by the GRC team. Instead of doing like a blanket, penetration test, you can actually kind of focus and do a deep, narrow focus on what needs to be protected. It ensures that the highest risk systems are thoroughly tested and secured. And the collaboration means kind of like offensive security efforts, again, they're more effective and the resources are used where they matter the most and they have the most impact. And again, to strategic, offensive testing. Strategic benefits of that would be, instead of trying to, again, try to test everything equally, offensive security teams can prioritize based on risk insights and, again, focus on the most critical areas. It makes their efforts more strategic and impactful. And again, too, it kind of increases the overall efficiency of security efforts, and it kind of prioritizes tasks based on risk severity, which would be determined by GRC. And also working in concert with penetration, the offensive security side of things. Oh, and by the way, too, I mentioned at the beginning, you can, if you want to ask any questions during the talk, feel free to raise your hand. That's fine. I have no problem with that. So this regards to pinpoint your attacks and risk data. So this is we're using security frameworks for offensive targeting. So this is kind of where you can use specific, like, security frameworks, cybersecurity frameworks for offensive targeting. Again, like the NIST CSF or ISO 27001 or CIS. They're good tools for identifying risks across across the business. Of course, I don't know why you want to voluntarily go through ISO 27001, because that's one thing you don't want to do unless you absolutely have to. And again, so defense security teams, they can leverage these frameworks to understand where the organization is most vulnerable and target their efforts based on kind of like the structured risk data that would determine, run through one of those security frameworks. Again, you could actually determine where the risk is the highest. And then optimizing offensive security testing with a strong framework in place, GRC framework. Offensive teams, basically, you're not just shooting in the dark and doing a blanket vulnerability scan or blanket, test across multiple range of IPs, for example, or apps. You have clear guidance on where to focus the testing efforts for maximum impact. It can actually lead to, better allocation of resources. You're not wasting any time. And then, it actually makes for more strategic and efficient testing and, enhanced effectiveness overall. And this is the P word, policy-driven testing, which is be a strategic advantage. So again, sometimes offensive security teams might overlook the importance of aligning their tests with existing organizational policies. And I'm actually mentioning here too, this is not, I'm kind of referring to maybe more of teams that work together in an organization, like say if a company did have a GRC team and an in-house offensive security team. Again, there could be issues where there's external offensive security team. You work for GRC in an internal company or internal GRC. You're hiring penetration testing team to do external testing. So this could qualify that as well. So yeah, so GRC teams can step in to make sure, in regards to internal policies, make sure the testing is in line with any kind of internal policies. That there's a structured approach by how they're conducted. The alignment can mean they're not just random testing or ad hoc testing. They follow a clear framework which could reflect, the organization's expectations or policies or standards. Again, too, I'll go back to PCI because they say if an organization has to follow PCI DSS, you have to make sure that the testing actually follows any kind of specific PCI standards or procedures or policies the organization has in place. And then when testing aligns with the organizational policy, again, the offense teams ensure they not only find vulnerabilities, they also validate whether the internal controls are working as required. This approach, it can actually offer several advantages. It helps confirm policies are effective in real-world scenarios that the offensive security testing would run. It ensures compliance with internal guidelines. It strengthens the overall secure policy in the end by verifying both the technical defenses and policy adherence. And again, in aligning with GRC's guidance, offensive teams can make their testing more strategic and provide insights that are valuable for both security and compliance purposes. And this is how I'm going to talk here about pinpointing attacks with risk data. This is more collaborative security efforts, how the working together can help. So again, this is, so in regards to some of the best results often come from joint security initiatives when GRC and offensive security can work together as one team. It's a lot of organizations don't realize that they can actually work together. I guess one thing you could actually give an example as, I have here joint initiatives. One here is tabletop exercises or red teaming operations. I guess purple teaming could be that as well. You could have somebody say on GRC side actually observing the purple team. For example, again, I'm a VCISO. I hate the term, but that's my title. I'm actually working with one of my clients now in their VC, so we're going to be connecting a purple team, and I'm actually going to sit in on the purple team just to have a better idea of how that works, because that's actually one of the areas where I'm kind of weak in. So, but again, this is where you could have something from the GRC side observing it, because they normally wouldn't have insight into those particular engagements. And again, so the benefits of collaboration. So, you can tackle security challenges more effectively. There's like a unified approach to protecting the organization that normally wouldn't necessarily be there. It's always tends to be siloed. And then you learn from each other. Offensive security teams can learn more about organizational risk, or they're risk aware, but again, they not necessarily realize what the specific risks there are to organizations that are actually determined by GRC. More often than not, they're just saying, okay, this is the scope, this is what you actually have to, what you have to target, go at it. You just get a better understanding of what kind of risks the organization would have. And again, too, compliance requirements. Again, you gain insights to those compliance requirements that you not necessarily would know as well. And then GRC teams, again, gain insights into like real-time, real-world scenarios or attack vectors that we necessarily aren't focused on, that we normally wouldn't find out in the run of the day during our day, basically in our role in the organization. And then, again, how vulnerabilities are exploited. Like myself, I think maybe a decade ago, I tried to dip my fingers into the pool of penetration testing, and then I was like, no, that's not for me. I don't have the right headspace for it. That's for younger people. So again, I have nothing but the utmost respect for penetration testing team, for red team. It's fantastic, some of the things that you can do. And again, too, this mutual learning can actually make both teams stronger in the long run. You can actually enhance the organization. Again, actually enhances the organization's overall security posture. And then you could actually help develop more comprehensive, effective security strategies for the organization. And now we're going to talk about, again, compliance and policy alignment. This is refining policy based on the findings from defensive security testing and findings. So yeah, so again, this is kind of, there's the old feedback loop, continuous feedback. This is when you should have continuous feedback constantly for improvement. A crucial part of GRC and offensive security collaboration is the feedback loop. Offensive security teams can provide GRC with real-world data on any kind of vulnerabilities they find. And then they can adjust policies and controls based on that information. And that ongoing exchange ensures that both teams stay aligned, basically ineffective. So again, it's just so they're meshed together. And then you want to refine this again. You want to refine your policy based on the findings. So the feedback loop is make sure policies are grounded in reality and they're not generic. So you want again, this is kind of the thing where I've seen so many policies from organizations where they're just basically copy and paste from templates and nothing's tweaked, nothing's actually configured properly. So this again too, you can add, you make sure, again, you can constantly update these policies on real world findings, and then again, so it's just not generic. So again, if you do go through an audit, somebody won't come in and say, no, this is not right. So at least they can see that you're actively, or you'll say you're proactively determining any kind of issues that you find. Again, you want these policies to, they'll reflect real threats and vulnerabilities, which will lead to better compliance again, and security outcomes. I hate keep saying that word compliance, but unfortunately, that comes with the territory. And also, it'll help your organization stay ahead of any kind of potential risks. And again, both teams become stronger by continuously learning from each other. And now we're going to talk about skill sharing. How you can actually, basically show each other what you do. So GRC and offensive security teams, they really need to share, what respective skills. They really need to share, say, what they can actually do. Again, GRC side, we can actually help offensive teams understand compliance requirements. in regards to any particular frameworks that the organization has to follow. And then offensive security teams can offer basically technical insights into security risks and common exploits, and there's just so much that the penetration testing side of things, offensive security, can actually teach us on the GRC side. You know, there's actually one thing that I've been starting to do in my organization. You know, we actually QA each other's reports. Normally I would do just say on my side and GRC side for any risk assessments, but now we've actually started to go and QA penetration testing reports just so we read them and have more detail so we have an idea of what the organizations do, what we're doing as teams. Again, like those insights, they can actually improve the risk management and again, policy making for the organization. And again, I feel like this skill sharing basically makes you stronger in the long run. Basically, it makes you both teams, excuse me, enhances the risk management, and basically just strengthens your organization and your teams as a whole. Excuse me. And now we're going to talk about data-driven decisions. So when GRC and offensive security teams work together, decisions are based on like real-time data. Like say, for example, like an offensive security team detects any kind of unusual activity in one of the company's, say, cloud environments. Like say if you have your own team, you do regular testing. You know, this could suggest a potential like attack vector. The offensive security team could actually share that basically that real-time data immediately with the GRC team. And using the information, you can actually assess the potential business and regulatory impact. Like what impact would that have to the business, those vulnerabilities that they've just identified. And then they could basically, you want to recognize, and you can actually, the GRC team actually might just recognize, say, okay, that's a potential breach, like say a privacy data or data breach, which could lead to any particular violations or fines, whatever. So together, like the teams could decide to prioritize securing the cloud environment, which you could actually immediately start to strengthen it based on the insights from the offensive security team and the compliance and risk data, which is normally managed by GRC. So again, that collaboration could lead to improved threat modeling and enhance overall security posture for the organization. And by sharing those insights, both teams can make more, say, informed decisions and develop more effective strategies to combat threats in the future. And again, this data-driven approach can ensure that security efforts are proactive rather than reactive. So you can just get ahead of things, and basically, so it makes so the organization stays ahead of any potential risks. So ultimately, working together in real-time data makes both teams and the organization stronger as a whole. Okay, and it can also lead to, again, stronger threat modeling. So when offensive security teams kind of contribute their insights to the GRC side of the house, I think the result is basically better threat modeling. I have to admit myself, I'm not great at threat modeling. It's one of my weaknesses, but we actually have some of our penetration testers, they actually do, at Laris, they actually do threat modeling as well, and they share data with us all the time, and they show us new things every day about it. So again, regards, another example of that, so say if your pen test team frequently conducts red teaming exercise to simulate, say, real-time world attacks on your company's cloud infrastructure. So actually what it is, after each exercise, the team could share the findings with the GRC team, which could actually let them know how, what their findings were, how things were bypassed. And then the GRC team is able to refine its threat modeling process. They could actually incorporate those real world attack, the latest patterns that were observed by the offensive security team. It allows the GRC team to create more policies that reflect actual attack vectors, and not your standard usual attack vectors. So again, as I mentioned, they provide real-world insights on attack patterns. So collaboration helps GRC to create policies that reflect real attack patterns, make defenses more robust and effective. By sharing the real-world experience, Offense teams enable GRC to understand how attackers think and operate. So that's, again, something normally GRC wouldn't necessarily be totally focused on. And it actually showed GRC how to identify potential vulnerabilities more accurately. And again, it would actually lead to more accurate identification of potential vulnerabilities for the future, so that they could easily detect them again. We're good. Now we'll go to risk identification. So again, risk identification, so basically that's kind of the thing where GRC kind of focuses on that. Basically GRC's their role is to identify critical risks that offensive security teams might need to address during their operations. It involves, can analyze business risks, legal obligations, any current threat landscapes that have been identified. By understanding these areas, like GRC, we help defense teams focus on what matters most. They ensure security efforts are aligned with the organization's most significant risks. So say for an example, I'm just giving an example here, say it's a fintech company. So using this kind of risk analysis, you can say the internal team can actually identify that phishing attacks targeting financial transactions kind of pose the greatest risk to the company. So GRC can actually work closely with the defense security team to focus their penetration testing efforts on, say, their email security systems, or say payment gateways, which are actually most likely to be, exploited by attackers. And again, by ensuring that the activities are aligned with, like, say, those high priority risks, there's a more focused and effective overall security strategy. And risk assessment. Move on to that. So again, in regards to risk assessment, so once the risks are identified, they need to be assessed in terms of their potential impact on the business. Offensive security teams can help by assessing technical severity of these risks. Again, it's something, GRC will have a good idea of doing it, but offensive security can dive into that even deeper. And again, in the meantime, GRC can ensure that the assessments are aligned with business objectives. By working together, you can determine which are most critical to address. And it could lead to a more effective security strategy. So another example is, say a GRC team identifies various risks the organization, say, as insider threats or vulnerabilities, like, say, third-party integrations. Defense security team is tasked to assess the technical severity of the risks. They conduct penetration testing and vulnerability scans to measure, how easily the weaknesses can be exploited. And then in the meantime, GRC can ensure that these technical assessments are aligned with business priorities, and such as protecting customer data or basically ensuring regulatory compliance. And we'll quickly go through how to craft mitigation strategies together. So when GRC and defense security teams, I think when they join forces, they can craft mitigation strategies that address both technical vulnerabilities and data risks. The calibration can mean, technical vulnerabilities are addressed. Defense security teams can identify the technical issues, and they bring their expertise in finding and fixing security flaws. And then business risks are managed by the GRC teams, ensuring that the strategies align with business objectives. And they consider legal obligations and compliance requirements. Excuse me. So by working together, I think you can create more comprehensive, effective mitigation strategies. Again, all the technical and business requirements are covered. And again, I think it leads to a more resilient organization, enhanced ability to withstand and respond to threats, and better alignment with between security efforts and business goals. Again, I think it actually allows you to address vulnerabilities efficiently, reduce potential risks across the board, and build a better overall security structure. Ooh, we're almost done here. I'm burning through this. So this is the last slide. So again, we all know cybersecurity is a continually moving target. There's always new issues, new vulnerabilities, new regulatory requirements that we all have to follow. So continuous improvement is essential to keep up with these threats. So GRC and defense security teams, they need to basically work together when they can, constantly and consistently, improve policies, update strategies, enhance security postures. But again, by collaborating regularly, they can adapt to new emerging threats. And you basically want to ensure defenses are always up to date, and you can stay ahead of potential attacks. The ongoing teamwork, I think, will actually build a more stronger and resilient organization, better protection against evolving cyber threats, an overall improved organization security posture. So ultimately, continuous collaboration, again, will allow people or the organization to respond quickly to any kind of like changes in the threat landscape effectively and efficiently. Again, maintain compliance with any kind of regulations they need to follow. And then it'll allow them to continually align security efforts with business goals, with something that someone should be doing, an organization should be constantly doing, because you don't want to fall behind. And with that, happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. As if none of us have been like assaulted with that information. And again, that's not a malicious QR code that leads to my LinkedIn if anyone wants to connect. And thank you, Hackfest, for having me. And thank you for attending. And we have time for questions if anyone's interested. Good? All right, thank you.